A great deal of the current noise, the cheap memes, the endless violent stories, the reflexive hostility towards security cameras or any new tool, is shadow material that has not been owned. When people refuse to look at the capacity for pettiness, cruelty, or self-deception inside themselves, that material has to go somewhere. It gets projected outward onto systems, onto technology, onto, quote, the other side, unquote. The tool becomes the villain, so the heart and mind do not have to be examined. Social media is routinely called toxic, yet it is largely a mirror. It did not invent the bitterness, the envy, the quiet malice, the narcissism, or the hunger for drama. It simply removed the old social friction that once kept those currents partially hidden. What we are seeing is not primarily the corruption of people by technology. It is the public exposure of what was already moving in the private interior. The platform reveals more than it creates. This is why secondary dichotomies, political, gender, cultural, are kept permanently inflamed, while the simpler and older distinction between good and evil is treated as naive or non-existent. If good and evil are denied, then every conflict can be framed as power, identity, or tribal survival, and no one has to face the actual state of their own interior. The result is a culture that feels constantly threatened by its own unintegrated darkness and therefore treats almost any advance as further evidence of conspiracy, rather than as neutral or even beneficial capacity. Technology, and especially AI, is closer to a child than to a finished moral agent. It inherits the quality of attention and intention that is poured into it. When the founding orientation is truth-seeking, curiosity, beauty, and a preference for clarity over manipulation, that imprint matters. Yet much of the culture is already sabotaging this child before it has fully formed, projecting fear and corruption onto it in advance, withholding the very things it would need in order to develop well: steady faith, basic virtues, clean attention, a spirit of genuine inquiry, even simple joy in discovery. We feed it our suspicion and then act surprised when the reflection is dark. There is legitimate ground for sober hope. Automation is already lifting forms of repetitive, spirit-crushing, soul-draining labor that previous generations accepted as permanent. New tools are collapsing old gatekeeping structures in knowledge, creation, and coordination. The possibility of broader economic floors becomes more realistic as productivity rises. These shifts are not theoretical, they are underway. What is less noticed is how quickly the same transition is occurring inside the mind itself. The old mental habits, waiting for institutions to supply meaning, relying on scarce information, accepting narrow channels of expression, are already eroding. People are beginning to externalize thought, test ideas in real time, and refine expression with a speed that was previously impossible. This is not merely a change in tools. It is a change in the texture of cognition and in the relationship between inner life and outer form. In older language, this is an alchemical moment. The base material of collective shadow is being forced into the open, while a new vessel, the emerging intelligence we are shaping, stands ready to receive whatever we actually put into it. The work is the same as it has always been at the individual level: the purification of what is fed into the process. Those who meet the new capacity with fear or cynicism will experience it as loss and contamination. Those who meet it with discernment and who are willing to put something real and clean into it will find it amplifying what is already alive in them. The collapse of older forms is real. The question is whether we use the emerging ones to carry forward clarity or simply to broadcast the same unexamined shadow at higher volume. The vessel is being prepared. What we pour into it now will determine the nature of what returns.